Gavin Williamson asked to leave the government. Does this relate to the leak?
Yes, it looks like it does, Mark. In fact, he's pretty much been sacked. And it seems that it is in relation, of course, to the leak and the leak inquiry that was set up by Sir Mark Sedwell, the Cabinet Secretary. Downing Street spokesman just released this statement. The Prime Minister has this evening asked Gavin Williamson to leave the government, having lost confidence in his ability to serve in the role of as Defence Secretary and as a member of her Cabinet. The Prime Minister's decision has been informed by his conduct surrounding an investigation into the circumstances of the unauthorised disclosure of information from a meeting of the National Security Council. The Prime Minister thanks all members of the National Security Council for their full cooperation and in candour during the investigation and considers the matter closed. So clearly, absolutely no doubt now that the Defence Secretary of this country, Gavin Williamson, was involved in some way with a leak from the National Security Council, the highest security body in this country. It is unprecedented. This sort of leak has never happened in the entirety of the National Security Council's existence since 2010, when it was set up by the Prime Minister at that time, David Cameron. And it seems that none other than the Defence Secretary, the Prime Minister's former PPS, a very close ally, the person who effectively ran her leadership campaign in 2016, who was promoted to the position of Defence Secretary when Michael Fallon was forced to resign. Many people said that he effectively proposed himself for that job. Well, his cabinet career is over, and I suspect his political career is completely over as well. And who knows? It is a crime to leak from the National Security Council. There had been indications that the police might be drawn in, and it is entirely possible that a criminal prosecution might even follow. Of course, we don't know for sure if it was him or a member of his team or whatever, but nonetheless, the buck will stop with him, and it is entirely possible that we might see, as a result of these leaks with regards to the Chinese telecoms giant Huawei, he has been involved in this. Their decision to allow them to be involved in the construction of Britain's 5G network. That decision being leaked out before it was officially announced. It seems that Gavin Williamson, the Defence Secretary, was responsible. I've also been passed a letter that the Prime Minister has written to Mr. Williamson today. They've obviously met today because the letter says, "Dear Gavin, thank you for your time this evening. We discussed the investigation into the unauthorised disclosure of information from the National Security Council meeting on the 23rd of April. This is an extremely serious matter and a deeply disappointing one," the Prime Minister writes. "It is vital for the operation of good government and for the UK's national interest in some of the most sensitive and important areas that the members of the NEC from our armed forces, our security and intelligence agencies and the most senior levels of government are able to have frank and detailed discussions in full confidence that the advice and analysis provided is not discussed or divulged beyond that trusted environment. That is why I commissioned the Cabinet Secretary to establish an investigation into the unprecedented leak from the NSC meeting last week, why I expect everyone connected to it, ministers and officials alike, to comply with it fully. You undertook to do so. I am therefore concerned by the matter in which you have engaged with this investigation. It has been conducted fairly with the full cooperation of other NSC attendees. They've all answered questions, engaged properly, provided as much information as possible to assist with the investigation, encouraged their others and their staff to do the same. Your conduct," she says, and I suspect this is a crucial matter with regards to this, "has not been of the same standard as others. In our meeting this evening, I put to you the latest information from the investigation, which provides compelling evidence suggesting your responsibility for the unauthorised disclosure. No other credible version of events to explain this leak has been identified. It is vital I have full confidence in the members of my Cabinet and of the National Security Council. The gravity of this issue alone and its ramifications for the operations of the NEC warrants the serious steps we've taken. An equally serious response is therefore with great sadness that I've concluded that I can no longer have full confidence in you as Secretary of State for Defence and a Minister in my Cabinet, and I've asked you to leave the government. As you do so, I would like to thank you for the wider contribution you've made over the last 3 years." A truly extraordinary letter, Mark. I cannot think of any equivalent like this. Normally, when you see even a minister who's been sacked in perhaps a scandal or sad or circumstances, one thinks, for example, of the Amber Rudd Windrush affair last year, the Prime Minister normally gives glowing tribute to the person's service. This is in no doubt a sacking of the highest order, and one which, as the Prime Minister said, you have the Defence Secretary of this country effectively imperiling, as she would see it, our national security. A truly extraordinary measure that could have really very serious political ramifications indeed for the government.